This isn't fiction. These are real people with real experiences that they can't explain. At Paranormal, we bring their stories to light. Subscribe. Hear 'em all. When I was 19, me and my cousin thought it'd be funny to mess around with some witchcraft books that he picked up from a secondhand shop. Not the fancy Solomon stuff like you see online, just a beat-up paperback with pentagrams and doodled and all the stuff in the margins. So we're sitting in his mom's garage with candles from Walmart and reading this ridiculous chant out loud, laughing more than anything. Nothing happened, or at least nothing that we noticed. We just went back inside, played Xbox, and crashed out. That night, though, man, I dreamed I was running barefoot down an old two-lane highway by my town. I could hear something behind me. Not footsteps, more like claws dragging on asphalt. I woke up sweaty as hell with my heart pounding. My socks, they were full of little bits of gravel, like I'd actually been outside. My aunt found the back door cracked open too. Freaked me right out. Never told her about it though. In fact, I actually shoved it down for years. Figured I'd spooked myself and life went on as it usually does. But last month I'm with my wife in Nashville and we're doing one of those haunted tour things just for laughs. And this older woman running the place just starts staring at me, real uneasy like. Says something like, "Honey, you've got a shadow still walking with you." Then she won't even take our money, just hands it back and kind of hustles us out the door. And now, for 3 nights in a row, same dream as when I was a teenager. Me running down that dark highway, lungs burning and whatever it is, closer than before. Wake up and I swear, my calves feel sore, like I've been sprinting. My wife says I kick in my sleep, but I don't think that explains it. Anyway, not sure what I'm looking for by posting this exactly. Maybe just to get it out of me or get it out there. Maybe somebody else has had this thing where dreams leave residue, I guess. Keep telling myself it's just stress, but man, I don't like going to bed lately. The last time I kicked in my sleep, I flung a drink across the room. Woke up to my dog drinking it, or licking at it. Licking is drinking, isn't it? For a dog. The Kid at the Bridge. 2 summers ago, this thing happened, and I think about it whenever I drive down this particular road. I'm in a town that has a highway that's sort of strung along it. Then there's fields and more fields. There's this little wooden bridge that crosses over a creek. Not much to it, just old planks and railings and all that. I walk my dog there most evenings, because it's quiet and nobody bothers us. Anyway, my sister came down with her 2 boys, and I figured we'd all walk together. Her youngest, he was about 4 at the time, real chatty kid who normally never shuts up. But when we got to that bridge, he nearly stopped dead. Wouldn't move, wouldn't even look at us. Just stared off at one of the posts like he was listening to somebody. We thought maybe he saw a bird or a snake or something. But then his face got all tight, like he was gonna cry or something. My sister bent down, asking what was wrong, and he just whispered, "She's sad." That's all. Wouldn't say who, just that she's sad. Kinda gave me chills, 'cause not sure if it's true. But locals say a girl drowned underneath that bridge way back in the 80s. Some folks bring flowers out there every now and then. They set them by the railing. Always figured it was just small town gossip. We tried to keep walking and distract him with snacks and all that, but as soon as we started moving again, he ran back and hugged the post. like really wrapped his arms around it, resting his cheek against the wood like it was a person. And then he said clear as anything, "Goodbye." And that was it. He's fine later, laughing and running normal again like nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake it. I still can't. We don't walk that route much anymore. The chair by the window. I've been renting this old house for the past year. It's sort of like a place where, well, let's just say it's quiet. Honestly, I picked it because it was cheap, and I like being up where it's quiet. But the quiet out here, it's not the same as being peaceful, let's say. When I was a kid, I'd always hate sleeping over at my grandma's. She lived in this drafty house too, and I used to feel like somebody was standing in the doorway just watching. Thought I grew out of that, but living here, it's come back. First thing that really freaked me out happened a couple of months ago. I had this framed picture of my dog sitting on the top of the dresser. One night I'm folding laundry, not even close to the dresser, and that frame just launched across the room. It didn't fall, it didn't slide, it flew, bounced off the floor, landed near the closet. I stood there with a sock in my hand, just staring at it. And since then, it's been little things. I'll be laying in bed and feel this dip like somebody sat down on the mattress. I live alone, so that's not great. Another night I'm brushing my teeth, and I swear to God I felt something brush against my ankle. I thought it was a bug or a cat or something, but nope, there was nothing. The weirdest part, though, was about 2 weeks ago. Came home from work and found the chair by the window pulled out. And I don't sit in that chair, it's just decorative, one of those old wooden ones that you throw a blanket over so it looks homey. But it had been moved, and you could see the marks on the rug where it used to sit. I pushed it back and told myself I must have bumped it earlier, but it happened again last night. There's also the butter thing, which kind of makes me laugh, but kind of creeps me out too. I had a brand new stick of butter in the fridge, box sealed and everything. But one morning I opened the fridge and half the stick's gone, sitting on a plate like somebody's been using it. I live alone. I don't even eat much butter. I called my sister about it and she just laughed and said maybe I sleepwalk. I know I don't. At least I don't think I do. In the basement, don't even get me started. Laundry's down there, so I have to go, but every single time I hear these little scuffing noises under the stairs, it's like I thought I saw something move, like a shadow darting, but I blinked and it was gone. It is an old house, so maybe it's a mouse, but I don't know. Anyway, last night the bed shook. Not an earthquake, not a truck rumbling by, just 3 sharp shakes like somebody put their hands on it and gave it a good shove, I laid there. At this point, I keep wondering if I should call a priest or just pack up and break the lease. But then I feel dumb because maybe it's all in my head and can't shake that feeling that somebody else is here with me, like in the house, watching. The carnival that froze. This was back in 2016. A small-town summer carnival. The kind where the Ferris wheels all, well, let's just say, doesn't quite look safe. And the kind where there's the 3 colors of cotton candy. The blue, the pink, and the white. There is only blue to me. And I was maybe 3 beers in, walking around alone because my buddy just bailed last minute. There was this weird moment by a tilt-a-whirl. I swear everybody stopped moving. Not like slow motion, just froze, and the lights still blinked, the music kept blasting. But the people, they were mannequins. I rubbed my eyes like an idiot. Thought maybe I was just too drunk. Then I saw these 4 kids in wolf masks standing at the edge of the midway. They didn't freeze, they were just looking right at me, and it was all synchronized, like some creepy choir act. One of them lifts his hand and does this sort of lazy wave, then all 4, their mouths at the same time, say, "Sleep." I don't know why I listened, but I sat down there in the pavement, next to a half-eaten funnel cake, and just like that voice, like not in my ears, but in my head, goes, 3, 2, 1. Congratulations, you're done. Game over. Like a video game screen. I felt my stomach flip and there's nothing, just blank. And when I came back, everyone was moving again. A guy walked past me carrying a giant stuffed bear like nothing happened. The rest of the night was off, like my phone buzzed with a message I didn't type, and it said, "Imagine harder." My reflection in the funhouse mirror shifted. Like not me, but somebody taller and sharper with these hollow eyes. I don't even like thinking about it. Later I tried telling my cousin though, and he laughed and said it sounded like I glitched out. Strange thing is last year at the county fair I caught a glimpse of a wolf mask hanging off a kid's backpack. Same design. My heart about stopped. And I don't go to carnivals anymore. Something about all those flashing lights feels staged, like they're waiting for me to play again. And yeah, sometimes when I'm about to fall asleep, I hear that countdown voice again real faintly. I'm not sure what the hell happened, but I can't shake the feeling I didn't come back the same. The night behind the barn. Back when I was 14, staying at my uncle's place in southern Arkansas. Got this old house out there. There were acres of woods and had a lot of fields around it. Kind of place where your phone drops signal about half a mile before you even get to the driveway. Real pretty during the day, but at night it's just black, like somebody painted over the whole world. And anyway, I was supposed to sleep out in this little loft above his barn, because my cousins had friends over and the house was pretty much packed. Didn't really mind. I brought my DS and some snacks, so I was pretty content with the idea. The loft had a beat-up couch and a lamp that really only worked if you kicked the base. Felt kind of cool, honestly. The thing is I realized way too late that I'd left my charger in the main house. So, around 11:30, I just decided to go and grab it. My uncle's yard, well, the light in the yard had burned out weeks before. It's just me and this tiny, sort of crappy flashlight. Kept flickering when I shook it. And I was walking across the dirt lot to the house, and I kept hearing this crunching in the grass like footsteps, but not steady, like stop and go and stop and go. I tell myself it's a deer, because they're everywhere out there. But then, just past the fence line, I swear I saw something standing upright, way taller than a deer. 2 shiny points, like eyes catching light, staring straight at me. I bolted and, well, no thought, I just ran. Nearly tripped on the hose by the porch, slammed the door behind me so hard my aunt yelled from the living room. She thought I was being dramatic, and I grabbed the charger and sat there breathing like I'd run a marathon. Finally admitted what I saw, though. My uncle, this big tough guy, used to hunt coons at night, just kind of frozen. Didn't laugh, didn't joke, and he told me I could sleep in the house that night. Next morning, he didn't say a word about it. Took me into town for breakfast like normal. But I noticed he went out later and sprinkled salt all along the barn entrance. Wouldn't say why. I don't know, but I can still see those eyes clear as day, and I haven't slept in that loft since then. The evening I wasn't there, I never told anybody outside of my family about this, and it happened back when I was in community college. I was living at home in this tiny little town, has one gas station, one diner, and a few too many churches for my taste. Anyway, one fall evening, my cousin dropped me off at the house after class. I remember tossing my bag on the couch, mumbling something to my mom in the kitchen who was cooking beans. I remember the smell clear as day. Then I went up to my room, and I had one of those nights where you're just tired for no reason. So I skipped dinner and crashed early. Next morning, I walk into class. My buddy goes, "Man, you were on fire last night at poker." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He swears I was there at his garage playing cards and joking around and drinking cheap beer. He even said I borrowed his lighter. And he wasn't laughing, he was dead serious. A couple other guys backed him up like, "Yeah, you beat me twice in a row." I laughed it off, but then they started asking me specific things. What song was blasting on the radio and who knocked over the chips and all that kind of stuff. All I could answer was like I knew, like I could see it in my head, same as a real memory. I remembered the neighbor's dog barking outside. Stupid dog never shuts up. So I went home that night, still pretty confused, and asked my mom what I did the night before. She gave me this look and said, "You never came down from your room, honey. You had a fever. Kept checking in on you. Barely even looked like yourself when I peeked in." And that part stuck with me. Barely looked like yourself. She said it twice like it bothered her. And to this day, I don't know if I dreamt myself into my buddy's garage or if there's something like a weird double of me wandering around. Every time I think back, I can smell those beans on the stove and hear those damn poker chips clinking. Both memories feel the same. Don't play cards anymore. Not because of that, just because I don't know, feels off now. The night I heard Buddy come home. Out of all the things that have happened to me, this is the only one that, well, at least to me, that felt different. When I was a kid, we had this old beagle. His name was Macaulay Culkin. Not the sharpest dog, but he was sweet and always stealing socks and dragging them into his bed. He'd howl if he left him outside too long. He was real dramatic, and he was basically my shadow. Interesting dog name. Anyway, one winter night, he got out somehow. My dad swore the latch on the gate must have been loose. But I don't know, like, we looked everywhere in the snow with flashlights calling his name until our voices were basically raw. And it was freezing, and after hours we had to go in. My mom kept saying we'd find him in the morning, and I couldn't stop crying, just sitting there in my room hugging one of his slobbered-up tennis balls. I remember I ended up crashing on the couch because I wanted to be near the back door in case he came scratching. And the weird part is, as I was half asleep, I heard his claws click-clacking across the kitchen tile, just the way he always sounded when he came in from outside. I swear I heard the jingle of his tags, too. Then the couch made this little sort of indent, and I smelled that wet dog smell mixed with snow and dirt. I mumbled something like, "Good boy, Macaulay Culkin," and I reached to pat him, and my hand hit empty air, and I opened my eyes, and there was nothing. No dog, no sound, just the ticking of an old wall clock. The next morning we found him, but not alive. He'd been hit by a car down the road. Must have happened not long after he got out, and my dad wrapped him up before I could see, but I knew. Still think about that night. Like, was it a dream, or did my brain just make it up because I missed him so badly? Or did he really come home one last time? The smell, though, was not just in my head. Way too strong, way too real. Sometimes I still catch myself just listening for those stupid clicking claws on the tile. Sometimes you can hear my dog's nails clicking on the tile. Old Mill Shadows. I grew up in this river town. The biggest landmark was this abandoned flour mill. It was right by a bridge, and the town tried to turn into a community hall once, but honestly just sat there half finished and was old and dark. When I was maybe 7 or 8, they're doing some kind of summer picnic thing by the river. My cousins were all playing tag, but I got bored and wandered into the mill because the doors weren't locked. The second floor was mostly storage and old chairs stacked and broken tables, that kind of thing. I swear, right as I stepped onto the landing, this door at the end of the hall creaked open all by itself, and an old baseball came rolling out, bouncing toward me. Like it wasn't just sitting there, it bounced. I bolted back outside like a little chicken. Swore I wouldn't go back in, and nobody believed me, of course. Fast forward, and I'm in high school. Different house by then, though. My room was down this long, narrow hall in the basement. Bathroom right beside it. Then the hall sort of hooked into the den where my brother played Xbox. One afternoon, I stepped out of my room, and just as I passed the bathroom, felt like 2 people dumped water on my head. I even yelled at my brothers because I thought it was them messing with me again. But they came running from the den, laughing at first, then confused, because my hair was bone dry. Whatever I saw, they weren't it, and the weirdest part is for a split second I swear I saw 2 kids in old-timey clothing, like stuff you'd seen in an old family photo, and then gone. Then there was a few summers back. Me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, congratulations, hit up Dairy Queen after a long day. Did the usual sit in the car thing. She finished her blizzard, stuck the spoon in the cup, set it on the dash, and we're just talking with the windows cracked. Then suddenly the spoon spins. Not falls, not tips, like it twirled around once. She said it looked like air pixels glitched, and I thought it was just a streak of light, like pushing it. And neither of us are into ghost stuff, but she still brings it up sometimes when we drive past that Dairy Queen. Don't know if any of this means anything. Could just be my brain filling in some blanks or drafts or something, whatever. But when I'm alone, I think about that baseball bouncing toward me, and I still get the chills. The old coal mine shift. A few years back, I'm working nights at one of those half-abandoned coal plants out in eastern Kentucky. Wasn't even running anymore, just some backup generators and a skeleton crew keeping the place from falling apart. Dead quiet most nights. Well, except for the hum of the machines, they never really fully shut down. Anyway, we had this weird stretch, about 2 weeks, where stuff just didn't make sense. Like my buddy Chris got all shaken awake in the break room. He swore one of us had tapped him on the boot, told him his shift was starting. Only thing is, nobody had touched him. I was in the control room with the others the whole time, and he said the voice, in quotes, was right next to him, low and almost annoyed. And then it spread. Guys who worked in those cramped tunnels under the plant started complaining about getting tapped on the shoulder while they were bent over at pipes. The kind of tap where your heart just drops, because you think something's wrong, but there'd never ever be anybody there. They'd crawl out and they'd be cursing and saying, "Who the hell was behind me?" Nobody, and we'd all be accounted for. The strangest thing for me personally, this one night I kept hearing boots walking the catwalk above the generators. Steady steps, real heavy. Climbed up there thinking one of the old-timers was doing rounds, but it was empty. Just the echo of my own breath. Stayed up there a while, hoping I'd catch whoever was screwing with me, but nothing. We'd tried laughing it off, saying it was just the place settling, or maybe one of us just being half asleep and imagining things. But the timing, man. All packed into that one stretch of nights, and then nothing ever again, like a switch flipped. Places like that, they've got this sort of weight, and you can feel it when nothing's happening. Wonder if we brushed up against something that we weren't really supposed to. The thing. Even though this is embarrassing, I'm just gonna say it. I was 12 or 13. I lived, at least to me, nowadays anyways, in the middle of nowhere. My dad had lost his job and we ended up renting this old ranch house. Had a little beat-up red barn behind it. Place was cheap and it was basically falling apart, and there were drafts, or the whole building was basically a living draft. At first, it was just normal old house stuff, like doors swelling, nails popping, and mice in the walls. Didn't think much about it. But after a while, I started waking up at night like 2 or 3 in the morning. Always the same time, with my window facing the barn, and I swear to God I'd see these tall, dark shapes just moving around there. No sounds of boots in the dirt, no source of light, just shadows sliding around like they belong there. One night I woke up, and still makes me feel weird even just typing it out. One of those shadows wasn't outside. It was standing right in the doorway of my room. Thought maybe I was dreaming, but I couldn't move. My whole body was stiff, like my muscles had just quit out on me. Then this high ringing was filling my ears like a whistle that kept getting sharper. Felt like forever, but maybe it was only a minute. Then gone, I sat up gasping. My shirt was damp like I'd been sweating buckets. Went running to my dad's room and he just told me I'd been having night terrors. But I'd had nightmares before, and this wasn't that. I was awake. I know it. Luckily, we moved out after about a year. Not because of that, just because Dad found steady work again, but to this day, if I drive past anything like that at night, I get that same cold knot in my stomach. Like something's still out there, waiting. And I still wake up sometimes at 2:30 a.m. for no reason at all. I rented this old house in upstate New York. It wasn't like haunted looking, not really falling apart or anything, just sort of an old farmhouse that somebody had fixed up. I was living there with my cousin for a while because, well, rent was cheap and we had 2 cats who basically ruled the place. Rent is cheap. I scoff. No way. So anyway, one night in late fall, must have been around 11 p.m., went out to the back field to smoke, and it was cold enough that you could see your breath that night. The grass was all crunchy with frost. Cats were inside, but one had followed me out, and she froze up suddenly, tail puffed out and ears back. You know when an animal just knows something? Like she's staring at this corner of the fence where, swear to God, I saw something dart by like a person-shaped shadow, but too fast and too smooth. Stood there a second, thinking maybe it was my eyes adjusting or car headlights or something. But no cars went by. My cousin yelled from the kitchen window asking if I saw that, and we both saw that. At freaked me out a little bit more because usually it's just one person who thinks they saw something. Went back inside, locked up, tried to shake it off, and put on some dumb TV and made grilled cheese, trying to act normal. Then the weirdest part is one of the cats started yowling like crazy in the hallway. Went to check, front doors deadbolted and chained, standing wide open, chain still hanging there just like it unhooked itself. And after that, little stuff happened all the time. Doors clicking shut when no one touched them, and soft footsteps upstairs, even though we only used the bottom floor. And once, a jar of pickles rolled off the counter in slow motion like it was set down on the floor instead of falling. I don't know what it was, and I never felt like it wanted to hurt us, but it also wasn't friendly. Well, more like it was letting us know that we weren't alone. We stuck it out until the lease was up, but I'll tell you right now, every night I double-checked that door chain before bed, and still, sometimes woke up to find it open. Anybody else ever deal with something like that one? The Lady at the Motel. A couple of years back, I was working the night shift at the small roadside motel. It's got those neon lights that sort of buzz and make that crazy sound. And half the time they don't even work right, but we get all kinds of characters passing through there. Most of the time it was truckers or folks just needing a bed for a few hours. But there was this older woman who stayed for almost a month straight, and she said that she was just passing through. But honestly, it seemed like she didn't have anywhere else to go. And she was quiet, except she'd mutter stuff under her breath sometimes, like prayers or poetry or just nonsense. Couldn't really tell. She always kept a little candle on her nightstand. Though the motel didn't allow candles, I didn't stop her. I don't know. She had this frail, sad look, and I felt bad. One night, a guy in the room next to hers died. He'd been sick and traveling with oxygen tanks, and we kind of knew it was coming. Paramedics came, took the body out around 3 a.m. After they left, I went back to the office, trying to shake it off. Then the front desk phone started ringing, and no one was out there. When I picked it up, there's no sound, just static. A couple of hours later, the lady comes down for coffee real early. She just keeps staring at his room door, and nobody had told her what happened, and I asked, just kind of casually, "You okay?" And she says real soft, "Those dark men came and carried him away." The way she said it gave me goosebumps. Weeks passed and she finally checked out. But before she did, she told me she kept seeing silver figures standing around her bed at night. Said they were waiting for her. She wasn't even scared, just kind of tired and like she was ready to go. The weirdest part is I always get a gut feeling when something bad's about to happen in that place. Like I'll walk by a room and a heavy feeling like I already know it's coming. And it's been right more than once. Not saying I'm a psychic or anything, maybe just a coincidence, but when that lady said she saw them waiting for her, I kind of believed her. Still work nights sometimes, and I swear certain rooms feel colder than others. Try not to think about it too much, but yeah, the motel's got its share of ghosts, I think. I have been in your position, sir. And I kind of believe you. The wrong number in the barn. Back in 2018, I'm working at this dairy farm. It's in upstate New York, middle of nowhere. A lot of cows and fields, and one gas station that just shut down at 8. Anyway, late afternoon, and I just finished feeding the calves. I'm sitting in the barn with my old flip phone. I remember it was freezing that day. Still had my gloves half on, half off. Wanted to call my cousin because he was supposed to bring me some supplies from town. Now, I never remembered his number. I just always hit recent calls, so I did that, and I scrolled down and hit call. But when the line picked up, it wasn't him. It was this really shaky voice, an old man. He sounded confused, like really confused. He said, "Is it dark yet? Where am I?" My stomach just dropped. I remember I actually stood up in the barn like I was about to run somewhere. I said my name and I said that I was trying to call my cousin. The man just kept asking where he was, almost like he was lost. I panicked and hung up and just smacked the red button, and my hands were sweaty even though it was cold. Right away I called my cousin again, and this time from the contact list. Same number. He answered almost perfectly, like, "Hey, what's up?" No old man, no voice, no nothing. I told him what happened and kind of laughed a bit and thought I was messing with him. I swear on everything I heard that man. There's no way I could have dialed wrong. It's the exact same number. Sometimes when I'm in the barn alone at night, I think about that call, like, who was I talking to? Where was he calling from? Or maybe, where was I calling into? Still gives me the creeps. The old mill basement. Never thought I'd have a story like this. But I grew up in this tiny town where the only real attraction is this old textile mill that shut down in the 60s. A buddy of mine roped me into one of these ghost tours they do every fall. Cheap tickets, hot cider included, and that sort of thing. Honestly, I kind of went for the cider. So the guide takes us through the main floor first, all the broken windows and rusted machines. Keeps going on about a foreman who supposedly died in an accident there, crushed by some pulley system. I wasn't buying it, but when we stopped at his old office door, the guide asked if anybody wanted to knock and invite out. Everybody laughed, but somehow I ended up doing it. I don't know why, just one of those dumb spur-of-the-moment things. My hand shook a little, I'm not gonna lie, and after that we went down into the basement, which used to be storage. Way hotter than upstairs, and weirdly, like humid, almost sticky air. They shut all the lights off and we stood in a circle while the guy talked about shadow figures and people getting touched. It sounded silly until, no joke, I felt something run fingers through my hair. Not a brush, not static. Actual fingers. Spun around, there's literally just a concrete wall behind me. No pipe sticking out, no gaps. I whispered to the girl next to me, who's a total stranger. Asked if she did it. Shook her head with these big eyes for the rest of the time down there. I swear, I felt like somebody was hovering just over my shoulder. Not heavy, not evil, just there. Like when you know someone's looking at you from across the room. When we finally left, I actually muttered sorry under my breath to the office door upstairs, just in case I'd pissed off whoever it was. It felt ridiculous, but also kinda necessary. Part of me wants to write it off as nerves or suggestion, but the touch was too clear and I still kinda feel it if I think about it too hard. Like, why the back of my head out of all places? The old cabin and the breathing thing. I was reading a lot of people's other stories on here, and I'm hoping that by telling my own story, at least somebody won't think I'm totally nuts. A few years back, I moved into this old hunting cabin and belonged to my uncle. Middle of nowhere, cheap rent, and thought it'd be peaceful. First week was fine, then one night I woke up to the nastiest smell, like rotting meat mixed with vomit. It was strong enough that it actually yanked me out of sleep. I tore through the place looking for a dead mouse, or maybe food I forgot in the trash. The smell just vanished after like 20 minutes. A couple weeks later, I'm sleeping alone because my girlfriend at the time stayed in town. Around 3 a.m., I heard what I swear it was somebody breathing hard in the corner by an old wardrobe. Heavy, like they'd been running. I sat up and, this part I hate saying, I swear I saw hands, pale hands curled around the wardrobe door. I told myself it was just shadows, but then 3 loud knocks came from under my bed. Not creaks, not pipes, but knocks, deliberate ones. Like somebody hitting wood with their knuckles. Months went by quietly, and I thought maybe I'd just spooked myself. Then one morning after a storm, I heard that breathing again. This time louder. Filled the whole damn room. I panicked, grabbed my jacket, and ran into a little den where my Xbox was hooked up. Trying to distract myself with the game, but the doorknob to the den started rattling. Slow and steady, like somebody testing it. I flung the door open and nothing. Woods outside and dead quiet. The door kept rattling on and off all morning, though. Even tried recording it, but of course the second I hit the record button, it stopped. But the worst were the whispers. Making coffee, totally sober. Well, that's good. I heard whispering in the next room. Not one voice, but like a bunch all muttering fast, like a crowd in a church or something. Couldn't make out words, just this weird hissy chant. Lasted maybe 10 seconds and then silence. Never really told my uncle about it. He just laughed when I mentioned the cabin felt off. Said his grandpa had died in that place, but brushed it off like nothing. Kept a little cross by my bed after that, even though I'm not really religious. Could have been stress, could have been my head, and I do still get goosebumps thinking about those hands on the wardrobe door. Moved out after the lease was up. Nothing like that's happened since, but sometimes at night I'll wake up thinking I hear that breathing again. Weird weekend at the hunting cabin. This happened when I was 15, I think, and my cousin was about a year younger than me. My uncle had this hunting cabin. It's way in the woods in northern Wisconsin. There's no TV, and there's just a wood stove and bunk beds that creak like they were alive. The first night we're unloading the truck, and my cousin suddenly sat down on the steps pale as a ghost. He said he felt like he was about to throw up. And then it passed in like a minute. Around the same time, the dog we brought, usually the chillest golden retriever there is, started barking at the cabin door like somebody was standing right behind it. There was no one there, and there's just trees, and the second night it got even weirder. My uncle, my cousin, and I are in the kitchen. We heard 3 knocks on the back wall. Not the door, but the wall, perfectly spaced like 3 knocks. My uncle went outside with a flashlight, stomped around the porch and didn't see a thing, and we kind of laughed it off, but that happened again about 15 minutes later. Same rhythm, same spot. And by the 3rd day, the small bedroom at the end of the hall smelled absolutely rank, like a dead raccoon got stuck in the wall or something. My uncle tore that place apart, flipped the mattress and closets emptied, and even checked under the floorboards. There was nothing. Stink just sat heavy in the air, but only in that room. Didn't drift out. It was almost like it belonged there. Later that afternoon, my uncle's buddy came by for beer. When we mentioned the smell, he kind of shrugged and said, "Oh yeah, old man Tiller passed away in that room, back when it was still his cabin." He said it like he was talking about the weather, and the smell vanished that evening. 1 minute gagging, next minute gone. Never came back the whole weekend. I don't know. Maybe something is in the walls. Maybe a story getting in our heads, but I swear I still remember the dog growling at that empty door. And that bark makes my skin crawl every time. The Vanishing Carriage on Pine Hollow Road. Me and my cousin decided to take her old hound. Took him for like a late evening walk down Pine Hollow Road. The stretch is half paved, half dirt, and runs between a patch of woods and a cornfield. Nobody really uses it much anymore. I grew up around there, but never liked going that way after dark. It's just got that heavy feeling. Anyway, it's one of those muggy August nights where the air sticks to you. Rusty was sniffing around like usual, and all of a sudden he froze with his hackles up and his teeth showing. We both tried to laugh, but the air was getting colder, just around us, like a weird draft, even though nothing was moving. We kept walking, and then I heard what I thought was a wagon wheel creaking. Not a car, not a bike, like an honest-to-God old wooden wheel. My cousin heard it too, because she grabbed my arm so hard her nails left marks. I looked down the road, and she whispers, "Do you see the carriage?" I squinted like crazy, but I swear there was nothing there, just this empty road. She swore on her life that there was a black horse pulling some old buggy. Said it looked like the one her granddad used to keep in their barn when she was a kid, before it got torn down. And I couldn't see a thing, but I did hear it, that creaking sound. And then clear as day, a horse snorting, like right in front of us. Rusty yelped and bolted so hard the leash slipped from her hand. We went chasing after him with our hearts pounding until we ended up by this old church ruin that sits near the crossroads. Half the roof caved in years ago. Nobody goes near it. We were catching our breath trying to laugh it off when a bunch of bats, or maybe they were crows, honestly couldn't tell in the dark. They started circling right above the steeple, loud, like they were angry at us for being there. And that was enough for both of us. Cut through the cornfield, stumbled out into the main road, and didn't stop until we got back to the house. My cousin was pale as a sheet, and she kept muttering about the buggy wheels. I didn't sleep that night, not a wink. Every time I drive past there, I roll the windows up, even in the summer. The night my grandpa came back, or something that looked like him. About 6 years ago, back when I was living in my old trailer, I'd just gotten off a late shift at the gas station, had a shower, made myself a peanut butter sandwich, then crawled into bed. It was one of those nights where I couldn't really sleep, just laying there half thinking about bills and half wishing I had a fan because it was humid as hell. Anyway, I felt this weight on the corner of my mattress, like when a dog jumps up to settle in, except I didn't have a dog at the time. First thought was maybe my cousin dropped by and was screwing with me. But it was like 2 a.m. and I didn't hear the door open, so I just opened my eyes, and honest to God, I thought it was my grandpa sitting there. He passed when I was a kid, but the figure had on one of those old flannel shirts he used to wear, just sitting kind of hunched, staring off toward my closet. I didn't freak out right away, actually. Felt weirdly calm, like, oh, Grandpa's here. Then my brain caught up and I realized that couldn't be right. I said, Grandpa. And that's when it turned its head toward me. Except the face didn't line up, like it was stretched. Like the skin didn't quite fit the skull, and the eyes, I don't even know how to explain them. Just wrong. Too wide, too flat, and lidless. Leaned closer without moving its body, just the head sliding forward until its face was right by mine. I could smell something, like damp earth or maybe old cigarettes. I couldn't move. I wanted to run or scream or hell even swing in it, but I just froze, and after maybe a few seconds, it kind of felt like hours. Thing pulled back and then nothing. Gone, like it was never there. I'd lay there till daylight. Didn't shut my eyes once, and slept on the couch for the next 2 weeks because no way I was going back in that room. Even now, every so often when I'm half asleep, I swear I feel the bed dip again, like there's somebody sitting down. I always tell myself it's just my imagination, but deep down I'm waiting for that face to lean in again. The Man by the Tracks. This was about 2 summers ago, I think. I was working odd jobs in a little town in upstate New York, mostly cleaning houses and sometimes babysitting. I'd gotten into the habit of walking down by the old railway tracks in the morning. It wasn't even in use anymore, just weeds and gravel and an occasional beer can. But it was quiet and I liked letting my head wander. One morning around 10:30, the sun was burning hot, and I'm out there and I have my iced coffee in my hand. I remember fiddling with the straw, looking down, not really paying attention. When I looked up, this guy was suddenly just there, like he'd stepped out of nowhere. He was tall, real tall. At least a head taller than me, and I'm not short, and I'm kind of skinny too. He was dressed so wrong for the place it made my stomach flip. Full suit, black, maybe gray, with a white shirt buttoned all the way up. Shiny shoes that looked like they'd never touched dirt before. He had one of those leather satchel briefcases like out of a movie. Nobody dresses like that in town unless it's a funeral, and even then not really. I swear I hadn't seen him waking up. The tracks are straight and you can see far down, and it's open space. There's nowhere to duck out from. Even checked behind me real quick, thinking maybe I'd zoned out, but nope. When he passed me, gave this weird grin. Not friendly, not creepy exactly, just empty. Like smiling was the thing you were supposed to do, but you didn't know how to make it real. His face was pale, and I can't remember his actual features, like my brain just refused to hold them. I muttered out a hey out of habit, but he didn't answer. Just kept walking slow, swinging that briefcase. And then the part that gets me is when I turned back after a few steps, he was gone and vanished. No cover out there, just weeds, gravel, and open tracks. I've told myself a million times it's probably just some guy. Maybe a lawyer passing through, or I don't know, someone eccentric. But it doesn't add up. I still walk that path sometimes, and I always look around way too much like I'll see him again. Well, it's been bugging me ever since then. My mom laughed when I told her, said maybe I saw a ghost of some businessman who's missed his train a couple 100 years ago. Funny thing is I almost prefer that idea to the thought that he was just a real person out there dressed like that. Nothing wrong with looking sharp, in my opinion. The house on Birch Hollow Road. When I was living with my aunt for a while, back when I was in high school, she had this little farmhouse at the end of Birch Hollow Road. It was way out past the fields, and it was, well, I don't know, just an odd place. My aunt collected old country stuff like lanterns and patchwork quilts and creepy wooden dolls that always looked like they were frowning. Everyone in the family used to joke the place had extra tenants, if you know what I mean. My cousins swore they saw things, and my mom said she felt cold spots in the hall and all that. I didn't buy into it much, even though apparently I talked to shadows when I was little. Thanks, Mom. Anyway, nothing ever seemed dangerous, and weird sometimes, sure. Lamps turning on by themselves, and doors that didn't want to stay shut, that sort of thing. It was just the background noise, I guess, till my aunt's boyfriend moved in. God, I couldn't stand him, and no one could. One of those guys who acts like the world owes him something. Always criticizing, always making comments he thought were funny, but were just mean or gross. Brought a bunch of junk with him too, like old deer heads and busted recliners and sheds that he kept trying to build in the backyard that never stayed locked up for long. That's when the house started acting up. I'd hear chairs scrape across the floor in the front room in the middle of the night, like somebody was rearranging furniture. I'd wake up, and then I'd find the crocheted blankets tossed on the floor, the dolls sitting in different places than before. Once my aunt's framed photo of her just slid right off the mantel and cracked down the middle. She'd tried to say it just fell, but I've lived there, and I know how steady that shelf is. He'd stop around blaming us kids, saying that we were trying to scare him, but honestly, none of us wanted to even go near that front room. There just felt heavier, and he hated it. Like he wouldn't even walk through if he could avoid it. And I don't know, man. Maybe the house didn't want him there. But I swear it felt personal. I'm gone from there now. Got my own crappy little rental closer to town, but can't help but wonder if that house was trying to push him out. And if it was, well, part of me hopes it keeps trying. The Man by the Barn. 6 years ago, back when I'm renting this small place out in the country. Nothing fancy, just a beat-up old trailer on a piece of land with a barn that looked like it hadn't been used since the 60s. Kind of place where you can hear crickets louder than traffic and the water smells a little bit like iron. I had strep throat real bad. Doctor gave me some strong meds and told me to rest, and I remember lying on that squeaky old couch in the living room, too wiped out to move. Middle of the night, I wake up, but not from noise exactly, but like from a presence. That's the only way I can describe it. I sat up, and through the screen door, I swear I saw this man standing by the barn. He was wearing this long brown coat, which was weird because it was hot as hell outside. August in Kentucky. He had one of those wide brim hats like what my granddad used to wear to church. And the thing is I wasn't scared at first. I just kind of squinted at him, like thinking maybe he was a landlord or some drunk neighbor. Sometimes it was the same guy. I even called out, but he didn't move and didn't answer, just stood there. I got frustrated, honestly, like, if you're gonna wake me up and just stand there, at least say something, right? I remember asking, well, I don't remember the exact words, but I was talking to him. He never answered straight, and I couldn't tell you if he mouthed things of it or if it was in my head, but the whole thing felt more like banter than a threat. I wasn't terrified, just weirdly annoyed. Next thing I know, I blink and he's gone, like just gone. Barn's still there, night's still heavy and hot, but no man. The doctor told me it was the meds, said hallucinations happen, and yeah, maybe, but here's the thing. I've had fever dreams before, I know what they feel like. This was not that, this felt solid and real, like if I'd walked outside I could have touched a man. Didn't think much of it until years later, scrolling online, and I stumbled across people talking about the Hat Man. My stomach dropped because that was him. Coat, hat, the whole bit. And only everybody else describes him like he's some nightmare thing, all terror and doom. Mine wasn't like that, just kind of frustrating and annoying and almost playful in a way. Think about it sometimes when I walk past barns or see an old coat at Goodwill. Maybe it was the meds, or did I actually see something people keep whispering about? I don't know, but yeah, that's my story. The woman at the gate. Don't really know how to put this into words, but here goes. Live on the edge of a small town. It's kind of rural, and my wife works nights sometimes. Usually it's just me and my daughter most evenings, and she's 6 and loud and goofy and into dinosaurs and those little squishy toys you find under the couch months later. So last week something happened that I can't shake off. It was Thursday night and I'm making mac and cheese. My daughter suddenly runs in from the yard bawling, like not just crying, but with a red face and shaking and hiccuping. Couldn't get the words out. Thought maybe she fell or saw a snake or something. Took me a good 5 minutes to calm her down. And finally, between sobs, she says, "The crying woman said Papa's coming." And that threw me because we don't know anybody around here like that, and, well, her only Papa is my father. My dad passed away 5 years ago and she never met him. Don't even keep photos out because it's kind of complicated. I asked what crying woman. She points toward the old gate by the maple tree out back and says she was standing there with her hair all wet. I go outside immediately and there's nothing and the gate's closed. No footprints in the dirt and nothing. And here's where it got really weird. She then starts describing Papa and said he was an old man with gray hair, a plaid shirt, and this part made me stop. She bats her knee and goes, "He had the hurt on his leg." My dad had a limp from a motorcycle accident, big scar on his right knee. I swear I felt the air go cold when she said that. She has never ever heard that story. I don't even talk about him, not even with my wife much. The next morning my sister calls me out of the blue and tells me Mom was in the ER overnight. She's okay now, but while she was there, apparently she kept asking if Dad was coming, like calling his name over and over saying that he needed to be with her. Can't explain the timing. I mean, my daughter says this woman told her Papa was coming, and that same night my mom was in the hospital talking about him like he's still around. Now my kid's acting normal again, playing with her toys like nothing happened. But she still swears she saw that crying woman. keeps asking if she'll come back. I don't know what to think. Maybe kids just sense things we can't, or maybe it's all coincidence and my brain's connecting dots. But I keep looking at that gate every time I pass the window. Maybe somebody was really standing there and waiting. "2014, renting this farmhouse in Indiana. Just me, my wife, and later on at least, our baby girl. Place was cheap, which should have been a red flag, but I liked the space and I had that creaky wood smell going on about it. Not like it had 100 winters baked into the walls. The owner had some retired guy moving to Florida, and he swore nothing bad ever happened in the house. The first year, I just felt uneasy at night. Like not scary movie stuff, just wrong, and if my wife went to stay with her mom, I'd sleep with the TV on and every lamp burning. Which was stupid because I usually hate wasting electricity, but I couldn't stand in that dark in that place. Then, after my daughter was born, things picked up, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, convinced somebody was standing next to the bed. Not touching me, not even moving, but just watching. Told myself it was stress, or maybe too much coffee, but the air would get so heavy I could barely breathe. One night I walked back to the nursery. I saw a kid, which wasn't mine, it was this girl, maybe 5 or 6. Curly brown hair, wearing a pale blue dress that looked like it came straight out of a faded photo album. She was crouched down next to the toy chest. Thought I was losing my damn mind. I didn't even tell my wife at first because she already thought I was working too many night shifts at the warehouse as it was. I saw her again twice, always near the toys, and by the third time I couldn't keep it in. My wife didn't laugh, which almost made it worse, and she started leaving the Bible open in the dresser, reading out loud before bed. And weirdly, things calmed down. The heaviness lifted, and I never saw the girl again. Fast forward, moved out in 2018 to this regular little ranch house in town. Figured it was all behind me, but just last year, my daughter, who's 7 now, told me she hated the old farmhouse. She said at night a tall shadow man used to stand in her doorway, not moving, just blocking out the light. She also said her big pink bouncy ball rolled around her room by itself. I swear to God I never mentioned anything about what I saw, though. She doesn't talk about it now, and her new place feels fine and quiet and normal and boring, but sometimes when I wake up at night, I half expect to see that little girl by the toy chest again. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I'll tell you this. I don't believe that house was empty either. The Woman on the Bridge. This happened maybe 3 years back. I don't really talk about it much because it still gives me a weird chill when I think about it. I live out in this small town by the river, and there's this old wooden bridge that connects the trail from the library to the fishing docks. I walk my beagle there most evenings, partly for the air and partly just to clear my head after work, and it's quiet, mostly just to hear crickets and the river sloshing around. So one evening, it's late, around 9:30. The sun's already gone. I was halfway across the bridge when this man just appeared. Like not out of thin air, but I swear I didn't see him walking from the other side. 1 second the bridge was empty. Next second he's there walking toward me. Brushed past me, and I mean brushed. My arm felt the sleeve of his coat, and he said something like, "Pardon," under his breath, and didn't even look at me. My dog didn't react at all. My beagle usually barks at literally everything, even kids on bikes. But he didn't sniff, didn't wag, nothing. Kept trotting along like no one was there. And the part that still sticks with me is I couldn't remember his face, like at all. Tried to think about it later that night, even the next morning, but it's just blank. Like I can picture his coat kind of dark and kind of too heavy for the season. And the sound of his boots on the planks, but his face, nothing, just empty space in my memory. I glanced back. He's at the far end of the bridge, but instead of turning down toward town, he just stopped and stood there in the shadow. I walked faster, pretending not to notice, but when I looked again, he was gone. Could have just been some random guy, sure, and maybe I just didn't see him come up. Maybe my brain glitched on remembering his face. But the way my dog acted or didn't act makes me wonder. She notices everything. Anyway, I still walk on the bridge sometimes, but never that late, and I don't linger. I would prefer to linger, but please enjoy the next voice coming up on after me. See ya.
Prepare for a journey that defies logic and challenges what you thought was possible. Paranormal M is your guide to the world of genuine supernatural stories. Don't miss a single eerie episode. Subscribe and enable notifications now. Civil War era ghost follows us for miles. Many years ago in basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, our unit was doing the land navigation course. The course is designed to make sure soldiers learn how to read a map, and you're tasked to find locations, and once at that location, there is a code that you need to write down, thus proving that you actually found it and make your way back. There is a day course and a night course, both out in the middle of the woods in Kentucky. We set up at the day course site and completed it without incident. However, our drill sergeants, being masters of efficiency and laziness, decided that instead of moving everyone, including themselves, to the location of the night land nav course, they would just make us walk and navigate us there on their own. This added about 2 miles in each direction to our course. They did allow us to start our course early, so we could at least get to the starting point before dark. We were paired up into teams of 2, so me and my battle buddy, in parentheses BB, planned out our route. One location was in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and the other was a far distance away, but it was along a dirt road. Knowing that if we moved quickly, we'd still have sunset light to work with, we went to the middle of nowhere location first, as it would be the hardest to find, whereas the one along the road next to a cemetery, we figured it would be easy to locate even without any light. We found the first location without too much difficulty, but the sun was quickly setting and it was becoming twilight. As we made our way back out to the road to the second location, by the time we made it to the cemetery, it was pitch black and the sun had already set. We also only had one flashlight because, in the infinite wisdom only a basic training soldier can have, my BB didn't think to bring his flashlight for the night navigation course. We ended up circling around this entire Civil War era cemetery before we finally found the location marker. We wrote down the code we needed and began a very long walk back to the day navigation site. Luckily, it was a straight shot down the road, so we didn't need to worry about getting lost or trying to get through the thick woods at night. However, only about a mile down the road, I began to get this feeling that something was following us. I looked behind us but saw nothing. The further we walked, the stronger the feeling got, as if it were slowly getting closer and closer to us. I asked my BB if he felt anything, but he gave me this confused look and began to get very annoyed as I'd turn around and point the only flashlight behind us rather than keeping it ahead of us. The feeling of dread kept getting stronger, and I repeated the Lord's Prayer in my head several times to try and calm myself or make this thing go away. As the feeling of dread reached a fevered peak, it suddenly dissipated. I didn't feel anything behind us anymore. For a split second, I was relieved until it dawned on me that the reason I couldn't feel it behind us anymore was because I was walking right alongside of us. Or rather, it was walking alongside of us. It dawned on me that either this is all in my head, or my BB is really not sensitive to the paranormal. As the now three of us walked for about another mile till we reached our campsite at the end of the nav course. Once we reached the camp, the feeling I had went away, and I just relaxed and managed to catch some Z's. Since I never saw anything, and it was just a feeling, I would have chalked it all up to just being a paranoid thought in my head. But the very next day, I went to talk to a good friend of mine in our unit about it. Before I could tell him my story, he began telling me about a series of weird things that started happening in the camp that night. And I'll never forget when he said, "Yep, it all started to happen just after you got back." Annie's friend. One summer weekend, my parents, my god-siblings, 3, 6, and 10, and their parents had decided that we would go to these cabins at one of the national parks in our province. These cabins weren't creepy or anything. They were actually kind of busy. We rented out 2 rooms for our families. At the time, I was about 15 or 16, the oldest kid in the bunch. So naturally, I became the babysitter for the younger ones, including the baby and the toddler. This was fine because I was well versed in taking care of kids, and I loved my god-siblings. The 10-year-old decided to stick around his dad, so I was left with a 6-month-old and a toddler. Which, for a lot, that's already a horror story in itself. But we're talking about the supernatural encounters, real ones, that we've experienced. So with the baby in my arms and the toddler following me, I decided to go out to one of our rooms. The room, as soon as I walked in, I noticed a painting of a forest, a lake, and a red canoe. Something drew me to this painting, despite how ordinary it seemed. Like something that just blends into the background, adding some color. But not enough attention. Yet I couldn't take my eyes off the painting. Under that painting was a single bed. About 3 feet to the right was a queen bed, and in the corner at an angle was a dresser with a large vanity mirror. Tired from the long drive, I sat up in the middle of the queen bed with my back to the mirror. My toddler little god-sibling, let's call her Annie, wanted to play. For the purpose of this story, I'll use my real name because it actually matters this time. So Annie climbed onto the bed and started jumping and giggling and having fun, as kids do. But her newborn brother hadn't slept yet and was looking a bit restless. I checked to make sure his diaper wasn't full. He wasn't hungry. I figured maybe he was just tired, so I told Annie to go over to the other bed if she wanted to keep jumping. At least it was against a wall, and it'd be safer for her to do so. She complied and continued to play on the opposite bed by the painting. This didn't last long, and she moved right to my bed to continue jumping. Then I noticed the baby was looking around the room, his attention fixated on something. I asked Annie to stop, and she did. She sat in front of me, and suddenly she went serious. She told me she was playing with her friend, a little boy. I thought nothing of it, maybe an imaginary friend. The baby continued to follow something with his eyes, no matter how hard I tried to lull him to sleep. "Look behind you. Someone's behind you," Annie said. I felt chills run down my back and my gut wrenched, and something felt wrong. I shook my head and laughed, played it off. The truth was, I didn't want to look. I was holding a newborn in my arms, and I had a toddler. My parents and godparents were busy starting the fire and cooking our food. My only option was to run, if anything. I joked with her, teasing her and telling her that no, someone was behind her. She giggled at me and shook her head and said, "No, he's behind you, my friend is." And writing this, I'm still getting the chills because I know how this unfolds. So bear with me. My fight or flight instincts kicked in. Holding the baby in one arm and Annie's hand with my other, I rushed out of the room and brought them to the fire pit. My dad snapped a few pictures of Annie by the fire and a large black dog. Mind you, Annie hates dogs, but she loved this random, rather large campsite dog. Her parents were shocked too to see her petting the dog, following it around, because she'd usually cry and scream at the sight of any dog, even a chihuahua. The night slowly turned in and we retreated back to our rooms. The whole family gathered in the first room I had mentioned, my mom standing at the door. Annie between her parents on the queen bed, she was crying, waiting, and panicking. She looked at me and the words that came out of her mouth were, "He's dead. Alex is dead. He's dead. His whole family died." And she pointed at the painting. "There." I looked at her. "My name is also Alex. I'm a girl," I told her. "Annie." "No, I'm right here. Mom and Dad are here with me. We're not dead, we're okay." She proceeded to cry, still panicking and shaking her head. She was terrified. She looked at me again and said that it wasn't me, it was Alex, the boy she had been playing with. Then she looked to my mom and asked why she brought a white dog with her and what his name was. There was no white dog in the room, but Annie could see it standing next to her. Her fear was enough to make us leave. Not 12 hours at that cabin, and we left. She remembers that day very clearly up until now. She's 11 now and still remembers the events. She doesn't understand it, but she knows exactly what she saw. I can't tell her the truth because it doesn't really feel right. Maybe like it's the right time. We looked at the pictures my dad took of Annie by the fire, and there in the background is a faint view of a little boy standing with her. We thought it was the smoke from the fire, but with the next pictures, it was clear that it was not smoke. It was a young boy. In other pictures, there's also a floating orb in many of them. Nothing wrong with the camera or the lighting. An obvious orb in our pictures, all near Annie. Family thinks our 100-plus-year-old home is haunted. I grew up in a small community in Ohio, where most of the homes were built in the early 1900s, including my family's. My bedroom was also in our finished attic, and from the time I moved in to the time that I left for college, I couldn't sleep up there by myself in the dark. I always felt an energy that someone was up there with me. I also would get up before everybody to get ready for school and our bathroom, and would be genuinely scared because I'd feel someone watching me from the hall or hear footsteps when everyone was still in bed. I'm 29 now, and while my mom was visiting me a couple of years ago, we were talking, and I just jokingly said that I always felt weird energy in our house and felt like I saw figures out of the corner of my eye. She looked at me and said that she's felt the same thing for years, and she started telling me stories about all of her experiences that she never shared with us growing up because she didn't want to scare us. One distinct memory is when my dad was gone for business, but she heard footsteps and her bedroom door opened. She thought it was one of us kids and pretended to still be asleep so we wouldn't wake her up. After the door closed and she didn't hear any commotion, she said that she got up to see what we were getting in, only to find us all asleep still. She also lost one of her diamond earrings in the basement over 10 years ago, and we couldn't find it anywhere. A few months ago, it shows up one morning on the kitchen table, and no one knows how it got there. We also will hear out our front door, and we'll hear something open. And that's a heavy old door with a distinct sound. But we'll go out to find no one's there, and the door is locked. TVs used to turn themselves on in the middle of the night. The power would go off and then on again. Though perhaps the electrical stuff could be attributed to being an old home. But lots of other small things like that. Anyway, this prompted us to look into who's lived in the home. And we're in fact the fourth family. We found an obituary in the local paper from the 1940s about a boy named David who was 19. And it said that he passed away from illness in his home at, in parentheses, our address, surrounded by family. He was one of 5 or 6 boys of this family who owned the home for quite a few decades. We think he may be a spirit still in the home, but we feel like he looks after us, and he's not malevolent. A lot of the quote-unquote activity happens or happened when my dad was away, so we think maybe he looks after us. We've owned the home for more than 25 plus years at this point. I don't get so spooked after finding out who we think the spirit is. Who or what was this shadow person that I saw when I was younger? It started when I, a female who's 18, was around 7 years old. Honestly, if I'm being realistic, I can't remember when it started, but all I know is that it was around my 7th or 8th birthday. All I can remember about it was that it started when one night I couldn't sleep, and where my room was, my window faced my street. I live in a roundabout, or a court, some may call it. I would usually look out my window, just to look at the surroundings. But out of nowhere, one night I started to see a man standing at the front of my house. If I'm being honest, I really was pretty scared, but not that much, and I was just curious to see who it was. So me being the 7 or 8-year-old self that I was, I tried to figure out who it was, so I opened my window and asked who he was. Remember, I wasn't scared, and my room was on the 2nd floor. After calling out, I didn't get a response, and I would end up realizing that I couldn't even see his face, even though there was a light post right across the street that shines really brightly. After that, I was a bit scared. So I went to sleep, but after that night, I would end up seeing him most nights. I don't know how many times a week I would see him, but if I was being real, probably a good 4 to 5 times a week I would see him. I've always sort of been bad at sleeping, and I'd often do things to keep me occupied or tire me out, so looking out the window would cure that. But with this guy standing there, it wasn't helping. The only thing that I could describe about him is his figure. I couldn't see his face, but all I did see was eyes. But eyes that had been red, or at least had a red tint to them. He also had a type of hat on him, and it seemed like he had a cane. Basically, think of how Abraham Lincoln dressed. I don't know, that's the only reference I can think of right now. I would end up seeing him for a good 5 years, if I recall, till one night when my parents were arguing in the basement. I looked out my window and he wasn't standing in front of my house. at the foot or the edge of my driveway like he did every other time. But he was at the side window. And he was at the side window of the front door. For more detail, when you enter my house, you can only go upstairs or downstairs. So when I saw this, I panicked and ran downstairs because I was terrified that he was going to enter. I ended up knocking on the door to the basement, but my parents never heard me, and I ended up crying and going back to my room to see where the man went. The last time I saw him was when I looked out my window and he was reaching for my door, and then I think I blacked out. After that night, I didn't see him anymore and haven't till this day. I can't explain why I saw him or what it was, but when I told my parents about this a few months ago, they didn't believe me and told my grandma, and she said it could have been a spirit or some sort of shadow person looking for me. I was scared to hear this, and it's been kind of on my mind ever since. I worked in a cinema built on top of where public hangings used to happen. So let's begin. It'll be a long read to some, as I don't want to tell you a lot about it with a half heart. Back when I was 17, I applied for a job in a spanking new cinema that was new to my city. There was a lot of hype about it, and it was a well-known brand, and known for being in the upper league of cinemas. I popped along to the interview, and to my surprise, got the job as a cinema host. My duties involved serving guests, selling tickets, cleaning screens and toilets. Basically a bit of everything. I'm a movie nerd, so I couldn't wait to start. This cinema was part of a massive regeneration of the city, and was welcomed by the whole country for creating job opportunities. Now, where this new complex and shopping mall was, had a bit of a history to it. Way back in the day, this plot of land is where public hangings used to happen for convicted thieves and convicts, some as young as 9 and 10 years old. In fact, it wasn't until the late 90s or early 2000s that hanging was permanently removed and replaced with some modern metal sculpture. When I say the location was removed, it was kind of a circular platform that was locally called the bandstand. After the bodies were hanged, according to history, they were then wheeled a short walk away and dumped. This is what the cinema and shopping complex was built over. Now you know a little bit about it. Let's move on to the happenings within the cinema, as that's what you're here for. In each cinema screen, there was night vision CCTV installed. It was useful for the ushers spotting teens misbehaving mainly. The cleaners used to be the first ones in the building each morning before us cinema staff could come in. One morning I came in for my shift, and a few of the cleaners were sitting around the confectionery tables trying to calm one of the female cleaners down. She seemed really upset about something, and I assumed perhaps it was a death in the family. I didn't want to intrude, so I went to start opening up the popcorn bins. This is when I overheard one of them say to the others something along the lines of, "She isn't lying, she's telling the truth. I've seen it too." This woman was deeply shaken. I mean, she looked like she had just seen a ghost, as us humans would put it. Little did I know, she literally did. Long story short, it all came out that this cleaner had witnessed a ghost in the biggest of the 12 screens. She claims she was cleaning the stairs when she looked up and seen a man sitting on one of the chairs, but she knew he wasn't real. As her story goes, she quickly fled the screen and ran to the other cleaners crying. Don't blame her. Myself and other staff members thought it would be a good idea to rewind the CCTV from the screen and see if we could see anything odd. As we watched her clean the steps with a brush and pan, and then you could see her slightly look up in the middle seats, freeze fixated on something for around 5 seconds, then drop her brush and run out of the screen. What was incredible to see on the CCTV was a sort of mist in the area that she was staring at. Me being me, put it down to dust, maybe a glitch in the screen spotlights. But this domestic cleaner was certain that there was a man sitting in the screen by himself. The story quickly spread around the cinema to the point that our management pulled us all in and told us that we needed to stop talking about it. And that was what happened. It was a trick of the eye. We didn't dare tell our manager that we checked the CCTV, as we know that it's not supposed to be used for nosiness purpose. Little stories here and there would casually pop up from time to time. The next one was one of the male staff members who worked up in the projection room, and they came running down into the confectionery area one evening and swore someone pushed deeply into his back when he was setting up a reel. He was badly shaken and quite the macho man who used to laugh at us for getting scared of being in certain screens by ourselves. He was in the projection room by himself, so there is no explanations for what he felt. I recall seeing management bring him to the office, and around 20 minutes later, he left and didn't come back to finish his shift. A few days after that, we were told that he wouldn't be working in projection anymore, and instead would become an usher. We were shocked as the pay was a lot less, but that's what he did. Someone asked him what on earth happened, and he point-blank refused to talk about it. Rumor has it that his back was bruised from this firm push, but I can't confirm nor deny, as I never seen it. The cinema was so bright and flashy. When it was bustling with guests, it never had a negative vibe, or maybe we were just too busy to notice it. However, the staff-only areas had a different feeling to them, and when guests would leave, the entire place had a different impact on you. It would feel cold, and you ever get that feeling that someone could just jump out at you at any point, so you're kind of always on edge? That. I would get goosebumps in areas that weren't cold, shivers in screens as if someone was brushing past me, when I would be standing in them to make sure that no one was fooling about. I just keep playing it off as other possibilities, which is what I'm good at doing. This next part is the longer version of another post I wrote last night on a thread. One night I was closing with around 7 other team members. I was team leader at this point, hence it being my responsibility to close up. It was around 12 a.m. and I gathered the staff outside the doors while I was locking the main doors. Just as I was about to do so, we all heard loud creaking of one of the public bathroom doors opening. The creak was long, as if someone was very slowly pushing it open. The creaking sound was well known to us, as you'd constantly hear them open and close with guests using them and kids slamming them. Another team member dropped out in bags and headed into the ladies' bathroom to check it out, assuming a guest had been left behind unwell or there were kids messing about. However, our protocol was to check each screen in public area before confirming with management that the cinema was clear. But then again, mistakes can happen. We were heading to the ladies' bathroom and each of the loo doors were closed, apart from the disabled. And that was the larger one at the very end. It was wide open. I called out, "Hello?" But nothing. We both walked down and peered into the little cubicle, and there was no one. Confused and freaked out, I decided to call the mall security to check the place out for us. Along came 3 security men, and they checked everywhere. But again, nothing. No one. All our staff, or rather our staff-only doors, were coded, so no one could just run out of them if they were messing about. The door that was wide open wasn't loose, In fact, it was stiff as hell. There were no drafts, basically no reason for it to give out this long, chilling creak. We closed up and laughed it off as we all went about our separate ways. But that particular chill stuck with me each time I'd be in them toilets. You could explain this one as just poor lighting or electric works, but when it happened to you, it was fucking awful. When we would load up the trolleys to take the rubbish out, you would bring the trolley down the basement and out into the loading bay. As you were underground at this point, there were no windows. The long basement corridors had them censored lights that would make a clicking sound as they turned on, detecting your motion and movement. One evening, myself and a colleague were taking a trolley down each, and we exited the lift. The lights came on. As we walked along, we were chatting about something or other, and the next minute, the lights went out. It was pitch blackness to the point that I couldn't even see my colleague. Our work radios that were attached to our belts started giving off the worst feedback sound, so we immediately turned them off. My colleague grabbed my arm and we both just stood there. I recall rattling the metal trolley to try to get the lights to detect movement, but nothing. I asked her if she had her mobile on her and to use it as a torch, but she didn't, as we weren't supposed to carry them on us, and mine was in the office on charge. We agreed if this was an electric outage, we should feel the walls to get back to the lift and back upstairs. Now, looking back on the situation, we must have looked like idiots, but we held on to each other and felt the walls back to the lift and elevator. Remember, we honestly couldn't see a damn thing. We were in a concrete tunnel with zero light source. We could only see the dim light of the elevator button. We pressed it as soon as we did. All the lights came back on. We left the trolleys there and went up and explained what happened. According to the mall security, they had no knowledge of an issue with lights in the basement. Yeah, maybe it was just a dodgy coincidence, but it was terrifying. Thank God I had my friend with me, as if I think I'd been alone, I would have passed out. Another time I was in the storeroom just sorting through a big delivery early in the morning, around 7 a.m. I was the only cinema employee in at the time, apart from my manager, who was in the office, and he was a male. My work radio buzzed, and a somewhat young female said, "Could you come to the basement?" It was a voice I didn't recognize, and it was clear as day. The voice said it in a kind of playful way. I stopped in my tracks and headed back to the office, thinking along the way that maybe my manager had his kid in. I walked into him and he looked up at me as if to say, "You good?" I asked him, did he have anyone else in the building with him that may have a radio? He didn't. He had a radio on his desk beside his coffee, and all the other radios were on the charging stations. I explained to him someone asked me on the radio to come to the basement, and in our shock, we just laughed. What else do you do? You go to the basement, of course. So we headed to the basement and no one there. We were both totally spooked, and at that point I honestly questioned my sanity, as I know still to this day what I heard. Other stories from employees I heard but never witnessed were such. Staff members seeing shadows in the sections behind the screens, hearing voices next to them when there was nobody there. Unsettling feelings when doing fire checks along the fire escape routes, and access codes on doors buzzing to say a code was input wrong, even though there's no one trying to use them. Another messed up story from a girl I worked with, and that I'm still close to. She was on usher duty one day, and a man came out of a screen during a film to tell her that there was a man seated behind him and his wife, who kept kicking their chair and whispering. My friend apologized and went in and up the stairs to tell the man to stop, but there was no one there, and no allocated seat purchased for that location. Her and the man assumed that he had snuck out, but while checking the CCTV, you can see the annoyed man turn around several times, assuming to tell this man to stop, but the CCTV there was no one. I have no idea what's going on in my house. Okay, so the first known time this thing happened was like 2 or 3 years ago. I was coming home from detention. I had after school that was about an hour long, and it was about 4:15 in the afternoon. As I'm literally stepping foot through the door, my brother and his friend walk into the kitchen. His friends look at me and say, "How'd you get downstairs so fast?" I was confused and just said that I just got home. He started acting weird with me, being like, "Stop messing about that. Were you just upstairs in your bed?" I just said I kept telling him that I just got home, but he was dead set on the fact that I was just asleep upstairs. My brother then went back upstairs, and I just assumed that he had forgot something at this point. My brother just hadn't said a word to me when we talked about it later on, and he said the reason that he went back upstairs is because he saw me too in the bed and was checking to see if anyone else was in my room. Since then, multiple people have seen me or something that looks like me around the house. It started off as just being me, but recently my friend has seen my brother a few times. Once I actually heard her say hi to him in the kitchen, and I thought she was saying hi to me, so I went into the kitchen to see what the fuck. And she just said, "What the fuck? Where did Riley go?" He was stood there at the sink. I was laughing because I was sat in the living room, so my brother would have had to walk past me to get in and out of the kitchen. So again, I thought that she was joking at first. Then I remembered I'd never even told her about the past experiences like this. I honestly have no idea what's going on at all. All I know is something keeps presenting itself as if it's me, and sometimes my brother to people, and it's getting pretty creepy. Does anyone have any ideas on what this thing might be? There have been so many little experiences that have happened in my house, and nearly everyone has seen something. Not a single one of my friends has stayed over, and no one experienced something. Not a single one of my friends have stayed over and not experienced something. So here's a couple more examples. Me and one of my best friends were sat downstairs at like 1 or 2 a.m. and she had fallen asleep, and I was still watching TV when the door to the kitchen started rattling a little bit at first. I blew it off because it does that sometimes due to the slight draft from my front door. But then the handle started shaking aggressively like it was being messed with. I woke my friend up and told her that we were just sleeping in my room. And instead, we fell asleep with the door closed and locked, which I don't normally do, but my sort of friend just couldn't sleep unless it was dark at about 3 a.m. So my friend wakes up and tells me my door just opened. I looked and my bedroom door was wide open, but it was locked from the inside, and there's no way to open it from the outside. It also could have just been her because I have a single bed, so we were pretty cramped to each other. I would have had to get her out of bed to open the door. Another small thing that happened, very often. My great-grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, and because my bedroom is extremely small, my Nan, her daughter, gave me my great-grandma's wardrobe as it's very small and could easily fit. I also have my grandma's engagement ring, which she gave to me when she was still alive. When I tell you I hear knocking from this wardrobe every day and every night, I kind of made a joke out of it. And we'll be like, "Okay, come on, nah, Laura, stop it." And it'll stop every time I tell it to. There's also a specific corner in my living room, and it has a big leather spinning chair in it. It has always given me the strangest feeling, like very uneasy. One night, me and my brother and 2 friends were sitting watching TV, and no one was sitting in that corner, when all of a sudden, one of my friends looked over and screams. then starts covering her eyes. I started covering my ears and freaking out a bit as I was startled. When we asked her why she screamed, she said she saw a tall, dark figure of a man stood in the corner behind the chair. There's loads more that have happened in my house. None of it seriously creeps me out, apart from whatever that thing is that keeps appearing as me or my sibling. Something about that makes me very uneasy. I used to work at a haunted psychiatric hospital. For some background, I've been a behavioral health nurse for about 12 years, and my first job was at a freestanding mental health facility in the South. This facility is pretty uniquely constructed, as it was originally a plantation owned by a wealthy Irishman who emigrated here sometime in the 1700s. The original plantation house is still there, and is now used as a business office, and the hospital itself was constructed to be attached to the house. If you explore the campus, there's a small graveyard with the owner's original tombstone as well as some other family members of his. Additionally, there is a sign that says something along the lines of, "This is dedicated to the slaves that worked and died on this plantation." Anyway, one of the stories that have been passed down among the employees there for decades is that a young girl in the Irishman's family, one of the daughters of his grandchildren, passed away on the plantation at a very young age, and that her ghost still lingers around the house and the facility, and that there are certain patient rooms that have an unusual amount of paranormal activity. One day I was walking past one of these rooms, and in my peripheral, I saw a young girl who looked to be about 9 or 10 years old sitting on the bed. She was wearing a colonial-looking dress, appropriate for the time period in which she was alive, and looked me directly in the eyes when I turned to look at her. I was incredibly startled and my mind raced for a few seconds trying to convince myself that she wasn't there. I walked a few feet past the room, gathered my courage to go back, and she had disappeared from sight. She didn't have any ethereal qualities, nothing otherworldly or strange. She literally just looked like a real person sitting right there in plain view. During my time there, I never heard of anyone else who had seen her as clearly as I did. But every once in a while, one of my coworkers or a patient would experience something strange, like doors opening and slamming shut. I remember one patient in particular that ran out of the room, white as a sheet, and said that while he was lying in bed, his bathroom door slammed on its own. It was loud as far as I heard. It was all the way audible from the nurse's station itself. This patient was there for addiction and had no history of hallucinations. I saw an actual ghost. This happened a few years back, and I was around 9 or 10. I was out of the country in a hotel type of a building, and they gave us the whole top floor. There were 3 rooms, and we only used 2 for one night. This was a long, long time ago, so I don't remember a lot of the details. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and my siblings were in the room. I tried turning the nightlight on, but it didn't turn on. On one of the walls was a woman, and she was like 3D, like, a human, but it was like in a 2D, I don't know, sort of like when you watch an HD TV and the woman was blonde. And the weird thing about her was that she had like a blue filter over her, and her mouth was wide open, and she looked really angry. Her halves were also pressed against something. It looked like she was trying to get out, or like she was scaring something with her hands. But she was also moving, and her hands were moving in circles along with that. I ended up running into my parents' room and sleeping there. That really freaked me out, as it was kind of an actual human. And there's not really another explanation other than a ghost, or maybe a projector, but I'm like 89% sure that it wasn't. There was another instance, me and my sister. We used to share a room, and our bed was like 1 meter apart. I saw a shadow pass between our beds, and now I see them all the time, but in the corner of my eye. This was right in front of me. Anyways, I got a bit freaked out but kept scrolling on my phone. The light was off, and my sister was in the room like 1.5 meters away from me. Suddenly, I see an arm or a hand reach out and grab me. My phone, it was the hand up to the elbow-ish. I literally freaked out. You didn't scream, but you jumped right up thinking, what the fuck? I just saw like this literal arm coming at me, like it looked like a real one. Those are the only proper experiences I had. I once saw a bright white light coming from nowhere and had someone call my name, and my friends in her house both heard it. But other than that, I kind of just see shadow everywhere. He wanted to share, since I'm pretty sure that the people I told only like half understand. My haunted life. I have a lot of stories from places I've been throughout my short 22 years. Ever since I was a toddler, I've been experiencing paranormal. Long post warning. Here's story 1. There was this apartment I was staying in with my older sister, my mom, and me. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old at that time. And this was the strange encounter. I had an imaginary friend named Charlie. My mom didn't think anything of it, till one day my mom's best friend had come over to visit us. I don't know how or what I must have said to my mom and her best friend, but basically to the effect of, "Mommy, Charlie's under the counter." And sure enough, my mom and her best friend checked where I said, and the name Charlie was written. It had been from a long time, according to my mom's best friend who told me this story. Maybe Charlie wasn't so imaginary after all. Story number 2. I was turning 9 or 10 when my mom and sister, stepdad, stepbrother, and I were staying in a 2-bedroom apartment. Everything was living there for the first few months till things got weird. One day I was in my sister's room when I heard the radio button click on, but I was home alone at that time. I walked into the living room where the radio was and I turned it off. The radio again, just as I was walking back to my room, I hear it click on. And that would keep happening the duration of time that we lived there. Here's a bonus story. I and my stepbrother were home alone in my room watching a movie, and then we heard a radio click on and we both looked at each other. We both went into the living room and there was no one there. But I walked over and hit the button to turn it off. Bonus story 2. I was sitting on the couch in the living room on my phone, and for whatever reason, something told me to look up, and I saw the radio button get pressed slowly. Mind you, it's just me in the living room. Story 3. This one night in the apartment, we all got woken up to hear a noise of my mom screaming. All 3 of us, me, my sister, and my stepbrother, came to our parents' room. My mom woke up with 3 long claw marks down her arm. Story 4. I woke up late and I missed the school bus. My mom called and asked me to take out the new puppy to go to the restroom. And that they were gone and running errands and wouldn't be back for a while. I took the puppy out and we walked back upstairs to our apartment. Just as I was about to touch the handle, I saw the handle turn slowly and the door open, and a rush of cold air hit me, and my puppy barking like crazy. I looked at the puppy, and he looked at me. We both stood there for a while before we went inside. Story 5. At that same apartment, my sister and I had a bedroom closet door, and it would open on its own, and often found it open when in fact we left it closed. Another time I was home alone, I picked a movie to watch. I placed the over on the dresser and went to the restroom. And when I came out, the movie was gone. I checked behind the dresser to see if maybe it had fallen. It was there, but it wasn't anywhere. Months go by and we're moving out of the apartment, and I go into my room and I see the movie I had from months ago in the place I left it from months previously. Story 6. 2013, I was 13, going on 14 years old. I had a dream about a house with green carpet. I was walking upstairs, running my finger along the stair railing into the stop before you reached the loft. And it was another 2 steps to reach the loft, and I saw another version of me in a white gown pointing to a room that would later become me and my stepbrother's room. I woke up, and a few months later, my mom and stepdad said they were moving and that we had a house and we could come and see it. And we drove there, and it was just like the dream of me running my finger along the railing, and I stood in the spot where the other me stood, and I felt drained. And whenever I stood in that spot, I would collapse unexpectedly and abruptly. Story 7. I was watching Netflix in the loft and fell asleep. I woke up to a loud scratching sound. It was 3 claw marks above where I was above my head. I saw an elder Native American woman in a headdress, and I saw the Nana that had passed above me at the feet end of the couch. I blinked, and they were all gone. Story 8. I was 14 when I had a dream about my mom and sister, and I could see their lifelines. My sister's was long, but my mom was short. 3 years later, my mom passed away. Story 9. I was 18 when my sister had a nephew. My sister had a nephew. I was sitting on the couch in the delivery room when I saw my mom in her green and yellow jacket with her SpongeBob beanie standing over my nephew smiling. She looked up surprised. I could see her, then she vanished. Story 10. Currently in 2022. I'm staying with my aunt and uncle, and I have my room. Ever so often my room door gets opened, and there's nothing there every time I check. And this keeps happening. It happened again last night on my mom's birthday, January 11th, 2022. Mind you, 2 deaths happened in this house last year. One being my little cousin in February, and our grandma in August. I was expecting some paranormal activity. I have no clue if this was following or maybe attached to me. Me and my girlfriend have been seeing a paranormal skinwalker not deer creature for the past 3 months. It just recently disappeared, but my girlfriend says it's speaking to her in her dreams. Anyone have any advice about what to do about this? I live in the rural part of the U.S., in the woods, in a small home. I'm not too deep into the woods. There's a town just a half mile from my home, and the driveway to my house is essentially a straight drive to this town. Why is this important? Because of what I'm going to speak of in this post. This may seem insane, but I've been encountering a diseased deer within my woodland property. This deer has been alive for at least 3 months, and I've seen it 4 or 5 times. My girlfriend, however, claims to see it every day. Furthermore, she claims that this deer is an angel, and that it whispers to her. At first, when she said these things, I assumed that she was just teasing me, as in the past I had suggested it may be a skinwalker or other mythical creature. However, she has quickly become obsessed with this creature. For example, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were eating dinner together at home. We were eating some cheap gas station hot dogs, as we were experiencing a major power outage and most restaurants were closed, and most of our food was spoiling. She suddenly looked out the window at the forest and began saying what amounted to, "I see it. I see the angel. He wants me to get close to it." She suddenly jumped up and ran outside. At this point, I am freaking out. One of the people closest to me in my life has just proclaimed a completely insane statement and ran outside into the freezing night. I quickly shoved on my shoes and coat, with no socks on, and joined her outside. It must have taken me just a minute to get outside behind her, but she was already about 30 feet away from me and into the forest. Keep in mind, she's barefoot and wearing long pants and a sweater. Catch up to her and she's just staring into the forest. I asked her if she was okay and she just laughed it off and said, "Oh, I thought I saw that deer outside again." About a minute later, we were both back inside. This incident has been rolling around in my mind for a while now. However, I could have shrugged it off as just her being slightly paranoid about her quote-unquote angel deer that she keeps seeing. Or once again, her teasing me. But just 3 days ago, something happened that made me realize I cannot simply ignore her actions anymore. I wake up for no apparent reason at 2 a.m. at night. My bedside is empty and my curtains undrawn. I'm tired, so I don't think anything of it, and just shift around. The second I get comfy and convinced myself that she was just in the bathroom despite hearing no noise, or taking a midnight walk, which we usually take together, I hear a fucking scream outside. I jolt up and have the worst heart palpitations of my life. It's clearly my girlfriend screaming. I hop up and jolt outside with a speed higher than my heart rate's BPM. My girlfriend's laying outside nearly naked, looking up at the sky, pointing with one hand, saying, "He's back, he's back." I'm freaking out now. I literally started crying. I don't know why, I just started crying. The sight of her laying there screaming at nothing made me so worried for her. I brought her back in crying and was debating calling mental health services. I didn't just want to go back to sleep and risk her doing something to herself or getting back up. But she's never had any mental health issues before this. The worst I know of is that she used to have panic attacks and went through an emo phase in college, but after weaning off of the caffeine and panic attacks subsided, and besides the incident of her running outside that other night, she's never had any issues with mental health. So this is all a shock to me. The next morning I stayed up all night talking to her. She just wanted to forget about everything. I asked her if she thought that she needed therapy. She seemed confused about this. She said that she was fine and was just stressed about her future and her career. From that day on, she's never mentioned the dear angel. I thought it was my little sister. Okay, so I was 14 or 15 at the time, and I was living in a small 3-bedroom house with my father, my little sister, 4 or 5 at the time, and my brother, 6 or 7. Myself and my brother both shared a room, and my sister was directly outside of our door, but to the left, both entering the kitchen. At this time, as I stated before, I was on my bed talking on the phone when I heard my little sister moving around in her room, going through her drawers, etc. Now this wasn't so strange, as she would always be waking up and pulling things out of her cupboards, clothes, toys, books. It was just a habit that she had as a kid. After a few minutes of this, I see her walk past my door wearing a long white nightie into the kitchen. From this point, she's out of sight, but her floorboards are real noisy, so I can tell where she goes. She moves some dishes around and then walks further into the lounge room. At this point, I assume that she went to the toilet, but after her not returning to her bed, I thought she had gone and sat on the lounge, another habit that she tends to do when she wakes up late at night. So, not wanting her to get into trouble, I tell the person on the phone that I'll be right back and proceed to go pull her back into bed. But when I go into the lounge room, she isn't there, so I check the bathroom. Not there either. Strange. On my way back to my room, I double-check her room, and there she is in bed, fast asleep, wearing a dark purple pajama suit. So I don't know what I saw that night, but it definitely spooked me. Also, not the only thing I've experienced in this house. Strange-looking humanoid beings coming out of a field at 3 a.m. So this happened to me as a teen. I believe I was about 16 years old at the time, so about 12 years ago. My sister and I were having two friends stay over for a sleepover one night. It was in the middle of summer, and we lived in a tiny town, actually a hamlet, and we were surrounded by prairies, lots of farmland. My sister and one friend fell asleep fairly early on one night, but my other friend and I stayed awake chatting for a while. We had our mattress on the floor, right by three big windows in my sister's room. We're on the second floor. These windows looked out to the street below, and then across the street to our left was an elementary school. The parking lot for that school was in the middle of our view, and then next to the parking lot, more towards our right, was a farmer's field. So we stay up chatting until 2:30 or 3 in the morning. Windows are wide open as there's a lovely warm breeze coming in. And suddenly my friend stops the conversation and says something like, "Oh, who is that?" I follow her gaze and see that she's looking toward the farmer's field. I see two figures coming out of the field. It's obviously dark, and they haven't yet come into the street light. So I can't make out any features yet, but I assume it's just some of the kids in the neighborhood. My friend and I continue to watch in silence as these two people make their way into the streetlights and start coming directly toward the house. Now, I really assume it's someone I know, because there's a few teen boys that would often be out late and would come to the house and talk to me and my sister from the window. As they're getting closer, we begin to make out their appearance, and I was truly shocked at how they looked. These two individuals couldn't have been taller than 5 feet. They were identical in all features that we could make out. And I mean absolutely identical. They were both Caucasian or white-colored. They both had totally bald heads, and they were both wearing the same long brown robe with a tie up to the waist. How I would describe it is they sort of looked like they were in monk attire. They were proportional as well. No big heads or big eyes, they just looked like little people. Even though they clearly don't look like anyone I know as they're coming toward the house, I begin to call out to them in a sort of loud whisper, "Hey, you." Then I start yelling out names of the different people in town that I knew. I think I was a bit in disbelief and thought maybe it was a prank, all the while my friend is totally stunned into silence. These beings make it just up to my parents' cars parked outside, so we have a very clear view of them now. And then they immediately turn on themselves and go back in the direction of the field. They never once acknowledged my calls. They didn't even look up. But they also appeared to be in discussion with each other, though my friend and I didn't make out any sounds coming from them. We continued to watch them make their way back across the road, and then instead of going back into the field, they start walking down the road. We watch them until we can no longer see them, If you follow that specific road, it just leads to more fields and away from houses. My friend and I stayed up for another hour talking about what the heck we saw. She was very Christian, so she believes that it was demonic. I have no idea. It very well could have been demonic, but also it's just so random. The next day we told everybody, and they seemed to be kind of freaked out, even my parents. I have so many questions. Why did they come toward the house only to turn back on themselves? I've wondered if they intentionally did that, like they knew that they were there and they wanted to be seen by us. Why were their appearances absolutely identical? Why bald, short? Why the brown robes? Also, what's up with being out at 3 a.m. in a field? I have Googled and I haven't been able to find a match. I did find an obscure YouTube video of a lady saying that she was visited by 7 beings that sound exactly like what my friend and I saw, but I haven't found anything else. This lady said that they're interdimensional beings that know the future. Need insight on what I saw that day. So this happened 10 years ago now, but I still remember it vividly. This is when I was 18 years old and lived with my parents and siblings in a small town that was right near the Rocky Mountains in Canada. It was summertime and about 11:30 at night, and it was a clear night with good visibility. We no longer live in that town, but aren't too far from it now. My friend, who was 17 at the time, also lived with us, and she was with me and saw what I saw. At the time, my family and I were part of what we've now come to know as a cult. This is relevant to the story because it's why we're out so late and my parents' door was locked. Me and my friends were told that we had to live with the leaders of the cult at this time. It's irrelevant to go into why for this story, but the cult leader's house was across the back alleyway and a few houses down from my parents' house. We didn't want to live with them, so we would spend as much time as possible at my parents' house and leave very late at night to go to the cult leader's house. So now back to the story. Like I said, it was around 11:30 at night, summertime, clear night. We leave my parents' back door to head to the cult leader's house. My mom locks the door behind us, turns off the lights, and I assume goes to bed. My friend and I walk out through our backyard and are in the alleyway. Our backyard has no fence, it just goes straight into the alleyway. We turn left as the cult leader's house is a few houses down and across the alleyway, with a slow incline and a bend. I'm hoping this makes visual sense. And behind us, the alleyway stretches a good 5 or so houses back straight. Right as we step into the alleyway, we hear garbage cans from behind us, about a few houses distance behind us, being knocked over. I can only describe this kind of like imagine someone clumsily knocking into them and trying to stop them from falling down, so they keep knocking them. Because we live right near the mountains, we're used to a ton of wildlife in town. Bears, cougars, moose. So my initial instinct is that it's a bear, and we've startled it. Perhaps while it was getting into somebody's garbage. I immediately panic and I'm wondering if I should go back through the yard and bang on my parents' door. But it's locked. Or if we make a quick break for the cult house, because it's most certainly unlocked. I'm making these calculations very split second because it's all happening so fast. My friend starts saying my name over and over, grabbing my arm. She's looking back toward the garbage cans while I'm trying to plan what to do. Then all of a sudden she screams, and I look over my shoulder. Not really any time to think or process at all, and then I see it. It was huge and flying. It swooped over our heads, maybe 4 feet above us, and continued up higher, maybe getting to about 15 feet. Again, no time to think. We were both screaming and yelling at this point. Here's the kicker. It flew right toward the cult leader's house. It blanked between cult leader's house and the house beside it and flew out of sight. When it banked, we literally saw a clear view of it as the streetlights across the alleyway illuminated it well. Now, I will describe what it looked like and how I cannot fathom that it could be anything other than paranormal. Its wingspan was about 8 or 9 feet long, maybe larger. It was inky black. I mean, just totally the darkest black I can describe. I've never seen anything like it before or since, color-wise. It had no distinguishable features, no feathers, no head, no eyes, no beak, no legs, nothing. The best way I can describe it is if you imagine a huge stingray, minus the tail and much, much longer wings. My friend describes it like imagine a shadow of a large flying creature, but a much more solid, darker shadow. It wasn't transparent. Like if you touched it, you would feel it for sure. Or at least you would think you would. It made no sound other than the smashing of the garbage cans, so it definitely was a physical being, and flew so beautifully, so smoothly. The way it banked between the houses was so effortless, and with it being so large, it was impressive. Anyways, we were totally stunned and shocked, and so frightened. We stood there for a short time watching to see if it would come back, but it never did. Eventually, we gathered ourselves and decided to go to the cult house, even though that was the way the creature went, because the door would be unlocked. When we got inside, we immediately went to one of the leaders, the woman, and there was two, a man and a woman, and told her everything as best we could, totally freaked out and shook up. And when we were finished, she paused and looked at us for a while with a strange look on her face and simply said, and I remember this verbatim, "Where there is great light, there will be great darkness." And then she walked off. My friend and I just stayed up for hours by the front window looking out, wondering if we would see it, but we never did. We never saw it again thereafter. I have, since that experience, attempted to Google on quite a few occasions, haven't found anything even remotely similar to what we saw. My second encounter with the paranormal. Shortly after my divorce, I sold my house. My best friend and I found an apartment in a 3-unit building. We had the entire second floor, and below us was a 1 and 2 bedroom unit. None of them were occupied because the landlord had just recently bought the place and was redoing it 1 unit at a time. I worked at a local bar, and he would come hang out with me to cruise for women. Everything started off small. We would come home at 2 in the morning, and the smoke alarms would be all going off. The place was sort of the kind that are hardwired. So if one went off, they all went off. The problem was that it was an alarm in the 2-bedroom empty apartment that was going off. We would have to go down in the basement and throw the breaker off to silence it. Once we turned the breaker on, then they stayed off until the next night. Sometime later, I'm not exactly sure how many weeks went by, but I got up in the morning after having been kept away by my roommate pacing and talking on the phone. He always did that when he was on the phone, no idea why. I asked him who he was talking to so early or late in the day, as it was around 3 a.m. when this started. He looked me dead in the eyes, and he said that he thought it was me on the phone. I had heard his voice, and he had heard mine. This happened quite often for a while, but the worst part happened a few months later. I got chills even preparing to type it. I was sound asleep, My bed was pretty much dead center of the room. Something yanked up on my leg and woke me up. I scanned the room and my eyes stopped at the corner nearest the door. It was eerily dark, almost darker than the rest of the room, and I could tell that something was in the darkness, looking back at me. I was terrified and nothing scares me. I couldn't find my voice to call out to my roommate. So I just laid there, staring back at whatever was staring at me. This went on for almost an hour, then I felt it leave. I no longer felt like I was being watched. Not long after that, the other 2 units became occupied and everything stopped. Even the smoke alarms going off on their own. Make sure to drop a comment about which story was your favorite on today's episode. And just to let you guys know, I've been receiving your feedback, and on my end, I would like to apologize for not only my gecko, which seems to shout at me as I'm reading, but by the fact that I've had all of this audio disturbance while I was performing some of these last videos. I was staying in a small little hut out in the woods, and there is often a lot of electrical disturbances, let's just say. It was actually something that didn't even show up on the audio file, yet you could hear it. So, whether it was the rendering of the file, I would like to let you know, sorry for waking you up. I know that would have woken me up, but that won't happen anymore. Moved into a new spot. Still geckos here, perhaps even more, but no more of that. And also, as a secondary message, I just wanted to let you guys know from the Paranormal M family that we got your feedback about the editing of some of these stories. We're a team here, and as far as any of these speculations go, as far as any editing software in order to make the stories easier to read for me, well, that won't happen anymore. I don't need any punctuation to bring you guys good stories. So, just to guarantee you all of the future stories from here on out, and quite frankly, the last 10 or 12, have all been completely raw and just read by me, your host, Paranormal M.